Hello everyone, and welcome to this new devlog for my co-op sailing game, In the Same Boat. As you've seen from the title, there is now a public alpha testing on Steam. Quite a few people have already played it, and thinking about all these players spending 1 to 3 hours on my game is really exciting. I've also received a lot of invaluable feedback, and I'm always looking for more. So if you're interested, please go to the Steam page and join the playtest. I've just released a pretty big update with some new features, so I'd love to get feedback on them. Just keep in mind that it's an early version, many things are still placeholders, and most mechanics are yet to be implemented. You also need a team of 2 people to play the game. That being said, let's talk about some of the things that I've added since the last video. In the Same Boat is an asymmetrical co-op game where the 2 players have to gather map fragments, chart the procedurally generated world that they're in, and deliver goods. The twist is that one of the players controls the ship, handles combat and fishing, whereas the other is stuck in the cabin where they handle the map and a bunch of other missions, such as deliveries, flags, cannons, etc. It's really a game about communication, because the main principle, so exploration, requires the 2 players to talk to each other in order to orient themselves. But beyond that, I try to make communication essential every step of the game. In that logic, I've planned a bunch of mechanics, and I've actually started to implement a few. The first one being naval combat. For the most part, the sailor handles the combat, except for one thing: they can't fire the cannons on their own. So they need to tell the cartographer exactly when to fire, and then they have a few seconds to aim before the attack actually takes place. One of the things I find most interesting in other communication-based games is description of symbols or images. So I've added flags to the game. Some ships, buildings and ports will belong to a specific country, recognizable thanks to their flag. These ships or buildings will attack any ship that doesn't bear the same flag as them. Thankfully, the players have a bunch of those that they can equip to avoid that. But obviously, communication is key, because the sailor has to describe the flag that they see to the cartographer, which then has to search through that drawer and equip the proper one. Eventually, the flags will be generated randomly, but for now they are just real flags. I have created a balancing mechanic as well, which is currently triggered randomly, but will ultimately happen when a storm starts, once the weather system is in. So the sailor sees an indicator of the ship's balance, and they have to tell the cartographer to move crates around in the cabin to balance it out. There are different sizes of crates, meaning you need to find the exact right balance in order to avoid taking damage. I have also added a mermaid mechanic, where the sailor is essentially hypnotized by the mermaid, and they have no control over the ship for a period of time. A backup wheel then appears in the cartographer's cabin, and they have to control the ship blindly, guided by the sailor. So it's sort of a reversal on the roles, because the sailor is actually guiding the cartographer for once. That's kind of it for the communication-based mechanics. As you can see, there are a few very different ones. The idea is that in the finished game there are a bunch of possible mechanics, and a few will be picked randomly for each game, meaning you'll get a different experience, different minigames and challenges every time. There are also a couple other features that I've added. First of all, to vary the sailor's gameplay, I've started to introduce some variation in the fishing systems, where a minigame is picked randomly for each fishing spot. Because up until now there was only one precision minigame, now there are 2, and eventually the goal is for it to be 3, 4 or 5 minigames, so that each spot is a bit different. I've started playing Dredge, and I really liked the way they created a lot of different experiences with all the fishing mechanics. The cartographer also has a new mechanic, as I have completely removed the idea of life points from the game, and instead I'm using the idea of damage on the ship. So each time you get shot at by another ship or you run into the environment, it adds one or multiple holes in your ship's cabin. Every hole fills the room slowly. The more holes, the quicker it goes, and if you wait until the water reaches the map, then you've completely lost the game. But of course you can quite easily fix these holes by just walking up to them and clicking on them for a bit. It's nice because it means it's much harder to actually lose a game, which is quite frustrating, but you can still get a bit overwhelmed if you're getting shot at by multiple ships and you have to at the same time handle cannons and fix the boat. Finally, I've also added a step at the end of each game where you can see the whole map completely figured out and the path that your ship took, which is quite fun to watch in itself, and it can be actually very helpful if you were completely lost during the game and you couldn't figure out where you were. Alright, I think that's most of the changes that I've made since last time. I'd love to hear your feedback on all these features, especially if you want to try them firsthand on Steam. So yeah, please just let me know what you think in the comments. The next steps will include adding a few magical items that will help the players orient themselves, such as a compass that is inspired by Pirates of the Caribbean. So this was more of a short update rather than a full-fledged devlog, because I don't have much time these days. Hopefully it's still interesting to some of you. Please let me know what you think. Thanks a lot for tuning in and see you next time. Bye bye.